broadcast. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live in the Napa Bowl USA studios in Las Vegas. And today we're going to talk about opportunity zones, real estate, and a few other vehicles that people are using to transfer property and avoid deferred taxes, specifically the 1031. And to do that, we're going to start off by bringing in Vicki Hutchmala from the QOZ Marketplace. Vicki, how are you today?
Hey, Ron, I'm doing excellent today, like always. Great day in Vegas today, and we're excited. We have a new guest, Lance Groth. We're going to talk about 1031s and opportunity zones, and I can't wait to get started.
Excellent. So let's bring on Lance. Lance, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Now, a lot of people are obviously looking at opportunity zones as a tax deferral vehicle, which is exactly what a 1031 is. Why don't we just start off by going over what a 1031 is exactly for people out there who may not be familiar with the term?
Yeah, no problem. A 1031 is a section of the U.S. Internal Revenue Code that allows investors to defer capital gains tax on an exchange of properties that are like kind, meaning properties that are basically held for business or investment purposes.
Okay, so now...
Does that mean that it's 1031s are specific to real estate?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and now, Lance, you function as a QI, Qualified Intermediate. That's what Growth 1031 does. Is that right?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
Okay, so now the QI, you're not out there identifying properties. Investors or people are coming to you and saying, listen, I already identified, and I need you guys to perform this action to get this thing going, right?
Yeah, we just facilitate a transaction. We don't buy or sell a property. We don't identify. We basically facilitate all the information clients need and help them go from one property to the next in a deferred manner.
All right, and like the opportunity zones, there are time constraints in a 1031. So let's talk about that. Somebody has a commercial property and they're looking to sell it. Now there's an identification period for that, and how long is that period go for?
Yeah, well, at the close of escrow, when the client sells a piece of property and all the contingencies are met, they close escrow, the two timelines kick in. One, they have 45 days to identify the replacement property, and two, they have 180 days to to acquire the property they identified. So basically, from the point of escrow closing, the first thing, of course, is most important is identification, and the client has two ways to go about that. One, 3 property rules, the most commonly used way. They basically have three options. Doesn't matter how expensive. The second way is called the 200% rule. And under that way, they can identify an unlimited number of properties provided that the aggregated sum doesn't exceed 200% of their initial sales price. And what that basically means is under that rule, they can identify as many properties as they want, but when we total the price up, the properties cannot exceed 200% of the property they sold for. So if they sold for $1 million, they can identify tons of properties, but in total, it cannot exceed $2 million.
All right. Most investors, though, they go with the 3 identification, I would think, because identifying a lot of properties, I guess it would be kind of a hassle after a while, or is that not right?
Yeah, absolutely. Most people choose a 3 property rule.
Okay. And now what would happen if they identify a property and for whatever reason they don't close on the property within the 180-day period?
Pay their taxes.
Okay, so the entire reasoning for doing the 1031 then is pretty much toast at that point because they didn't go within the time frame, right?
Yeah, that's the whole rules. One of the main reasons exchanges fail is because of the inability to identify properties. So there's no extra penalty. It's just if you fail to follow the rules, then you have to pay your taxes.
Yeah, well, I guess that's when they start looking at opportunity zones as well. But here in Vegas, we had a lot of commercial property activity years ago. I don't know if it's kind of like tailed off for a while, but I know a lot of people are still doing 1031s. Are you seeing the same amount of volume of 1031s, let's say, from 5 years ago till today, or is it pretty much stay stable, or what are you looking at?
Yeah, same volume, especially with summer coming. People are buying and selling or picking up a bed in business. So opportunity zones hasn't yet impacted the space. people are still using 1031s to defer their capital gains taxes on a regular basis, especially investors that have done a 1031 in the past.
So does Growth 1031, do you initiate and facilitate these exchanges strictly in Arizona or the Phoenix area where you're located, or do you do them all over the country?
1031 exchange is a federal guideline, so it includes all the U.S. states and the U.S. territories. So
just like a opportunity zone. Are you involved in any opportunity zones or funds or investors?
Yeah, we've actually just started consulting a few of our clients, one of which had a failed exchange on how to actually go about doing a proper opportunity zone and making sure he can still get his tax benefits. So we've kind of just kickstarted things with growth opportunities, but we're still heavily focused on 1031 exchanges.
All right. Well, what do you see as the big time differences between a 1031 and an investor who may be looking at an opportunity zone fund?
Well, one of the biggest differences is that 1031s is specific to real estate. So with investors with opportunity zone funds, the funds are actually not specific to real estate. So a lot of investors coming in, venture capitalists, business ventures, and people in the tech community. So the different type of investors is one of the big difference. Secondly, one of the big things we're seeing is one of the rules in the opportunity zone, which people kind of misunderstand a lot, is that only the original capital gains tax will be subject to the 15% exemption. So when they sell a piece of property, when they defer it, opportunity zone has the added advantage that, you stay in the investment 5 years, then you're going to get 10% of the taxes you deferred exempt. You stay in the investment 7 years, you get another 5%, which brings it up to 15%. But the big issue is that in 2026, with that 15% exemption, those taxes are due. So we have a lot of 1031 exchange clients that's been deferring property for ages, and they're not quite ready to pay those capital gains tax in 2026. So that's one of the major things that we're seeing clients hesitant for, because with 1031, we call it 3 Ds. You defer until you die. And
that's right.
When somebody passes those, all those investments to their heirs, the heirs get immediate step up in basis. So
leave it to the heirs, right. Yeah, because theoretically, like you said, you could just keep rolling over your 1031 over and over and over again. Now, I think when you're looking at an opportunity zone fund, the play there is if you keep your money in there for 10 years, I believe the money that you make within the fund is all tax free. Is that right? Do you know?
Yeah, exactly. So the money you make within the fund is tax free. So they're banking a lot on those funds, the property that they're investing or whatever interest, they're banking a lot on that appreciating, and probably what do they call it, refinancing, pulling that out and paying the taxes originally due in 2026. So it's a lot of a lot of speculation there, but a lot of 1031 is just defer. Not due at any real point.
And talk about a little bit of this term that I hear all the time of a like property in a 1031. What does that actually mean? Like, does that mean like? Well, you tell us. What is that? Like kind?
Like kind just means the property. When you're doing a 1031 exchange, you're exchanging into a property. You're selling one property for another property, so you're just exchanging the nature of your investment. When the term like kind goes to the first requirement that the building has to be of qualified use, because a lot of clients give us a call to say, hey, I'm selling my home, I want to do a 1031 exchange, and we have to ask them, well, since you said home, do you live there? Is that your primary residence? And they say yes. Well, we say, this property doesn't qualify. But if you can be the same property, they don't live in it, it's not their primary residence, they utilize it for business or investment, and if that's the case, then the property qualifies for a 1031 exchange. So when you sell a property, you have to exchange into like kind, and like kind means it has to meet the same qualifications as an exchange into another property that is utilized for business or investment purposes.
All right, so if I have an apartment building, for example, I could roll that into a strip center or an office building then, right? That basically
you can go from apartment building to a strip center to office space to a single unit condo that you rent out, a single unit condo to a 60-unit complex, just as long as that real estate is used for like-kind purposes, meaning the person who owns it is utilizing this real estate for business or investment purposes.
And how does the person who owns it, whether it be a corporation or a partnership or an individual, when they want to do the 1031 exchange, how do they tell the government that this deal is done? Do you guys give them any kind of seal of approval, or what do they have to do? Just file it on their tax return?
Well, if it's California-based, they have to send a 593C to the Franchise Tax Board, and at the end of the year, CPAs filed a form, I believe, 8994, which is just reporting a like-kind exchange, and they just let them know the details of the transaction. They send it in along with their taxes.
Right.
So each one, whether it's an opportunity zone, investment or a 1031 exchange, each one has its own criteria that don't really overlap aside from the capital gains. So when somebody comes to you or are interested, you have to, between you and your investor, decide, well, which is going to be best here or more advantageous for now, for the future, or into the far future for your heirs and beneficiaries.
We do not do that at all. We do not help our clients decide. We always let them know we are just a tool that facilitates the transaction. We always defer to the client's CPA or their financial advisor. We let them handle that as in which route they would like to go, and whichever one they choose, we'll facilitate. But we do not give clients any guidance, any financial advice to say, hey, we think this one will be better for your investment portfolio. We are literally just a tool that facilitates transactions.
So after they figure it out, they come and they say, well, I don't know, and you say, well, there's this opportunity in opportunity zones, there's this opportunity in a 1031, go talk to whomever, figure it out, and then come back to us and we'll facilitate it, put it together, and make it happen.
I haven't encountered a position where the client is calling us, asking us which one is better. Most clients call us already knowing what they want to facilitate in mind. But what the best we'll do is just educate them as best as we can on the benefits of both tax deferrals.
Exactly, yeah.
So do you do any kind of marketing or promoting of one or the other, or do you just use word-of-mouth clientele?
Well, we have a fairly aggressive marketing company that assists both growth opportunities and growth 1031. It's growth 101 marketing, and what they do is we have a database that's constantly growing. About, I believe, 11,000 people in the database, which we send email campaigns to which will have educational information on 1031s or opportunity zones, and we traditionally marketed just 1031s, but as, of course, the popularity of opportunity zones has grown, we've actually started marketing opportunity zones, and July 18th is probably one of our first really big opportunity zone seminar that we're hosting in San Diego, and a number of professionals from the Opportunity Zone Expo are flying in to speak at it.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, that'd be something to definitely go to. That sounds pretty interesting. Well, you've done a lot of those conferences too, right, Lance? I mean, we met you at the Opportunity Zone Expo in Las Vegas, and I know you were on stage talking about this as well. So I'm sure you do a lot of these talks and explain the differences, because this is such a new topic. Not so much 1031s, but certainly opportunity zones that investors really need to know all the things about it and all the positives and negatives about. So it all works. Let's get back to this whole thing about the failed exchanges, though, because that's kind of interesting. What percentage of 1031s do you think fail?
15%.
Ballpark.
It's a national number.
How much?
15% is the national number. 15.
Is it okay? 15. Okay. All right. So now, if which I think is actually, I would have thought it was a little higher, but okay. So now these people who have failed 1031s, they're freaking out. They don't know what to do. They still don't want to pay the taxes. So obviously, the 1030, the Opportunity Zone Fund may be an option for them, right? But I would imagine from your perspective, talking to these guys, they don't know about the opportunity zones because this is so new. Do you find that a lot too, that you have to tell people that this is out there?
I do 2 or 3 office visits to real estate companies, and there's still real estate brokers and agents that are unfamiliar with 1031. So
right.
When it comes to opportunity zones, absolutely, they are completely oblivious. And, whether or not they're oblivious, I mean, it's no secret. The rules were just written in a horrific manner. So it's their concerns are warranted, and it's a difficult IRS ruling to understand. So there's a lot of confusion in the area.
Yeah, well, hopefully these new guidelines help, but they're going to have, I'm sure they're going to have more guidelines because, like you said, even with the new ones, a lot of people are confused about this. You know, it's really, really crazy. Have you seen anything in a 1031 where either went right or wrong, where you said to yourself, "Oh my God, I can't believe that worked"?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen people do simultaneous exchanges where they close escrow on the property they're selling, close escrow on the property they're acquiring in the same day, and I normally advise against it because there's so much that has to go in selling. You have to get notarized, you have to get a title report, and then you have to wire the funds before 1:30 or 2 o'clock, which is wire cutoff. And I've seen we've done a few successful ones, and the success isn't more so us. The success is the escrow officers and title officers being able to get everything stamped, approved, and wired in a set time.
Yeah, it's a tough job. And even if somebody's going to identify a property, identifying a property and putting an offer down and getting an offer accepted is a whole different story. So if I identify, let's say, 3 properties and I'm waiting around and all of a sudden all 3 don't become available anymore, maybe they're sold and whatever, you got to be standing there with a bag of tax exposure saying, well, what am I going to do? So,
yeah, you got to be able to be very reactive.
Right. Okay, cool. And again, like we talked about before, at that point, maybe that's an option. Maybe somebody out there right now is listening to this and has this failed 1031 or just decides they don't know what they want to do with it. The opportunity zone investment is a possibility, but like you said before, the big difference, in my mind, the big difference is the length of time you have to keep the investment into the fund, into the opportunity zone fund.
Yeah.
And the fact that you said, like you said earlier, eventually the tax is due. At some point, they're going to get hit with a tax bill of some kind.
Yeah.
Going opportunity zone. Okay.
Yeah, 2026, probably one of the best companies to own will be mortgage lenders who are probably going to be in their heyday with refinancing.
You are correct about that. I agree. We had a lot of people come on and talk to us about that point too, and that's a really good prediction. Unfortunately, you're probably right.
Yeah, absolutely. They're gonna need that capital. They're gonna take it from somewhere, and they might as well take it from the equity in their property.
Right. Okay. Now, what about the opportunity zones in different parts of the country? Are you seeing some of this real estate stuff happening in one area versus another, or is it kind of just as a QI, and it's not really something that you even track?
We don't track it too much, but Army of people send us articles, and we're in close conversation with our city council members and things of that nature. And truthfully, it's been pretty. In San Diego, it's been pretty aggressive in getting this thing going because the city council members, they themselves are really excited for capital to be coming into some of these low-income areas. So they've done their part to help educate the public in those areas that are living there, and they're trying their best to be the bridge that brings the investors and the people in those communities who have the property together to get a deal done as soon as possible.
Yeah, you nailed it there. Vicki, how many times do we say that? The fact that communication is key, education, and the local communities have to really get involved and be on board with the process. How many times do we say that?
More times than I can remember, Ron. And not only that, but almost every single one of our guests on the podcast we've done have said the same thing, that it's a symbiotic relationship. If you don't all work together and come to the table, you're not going to be as successful, for sure.
Yeah, it's been a big staple, and I think Scott Turner, the new executive director of the whole program, at the last expo, he really drove it home. Because the entire expo, everybody's talking about the mechanics, analytics, and about the tax and the financial burdens and things of that nature. But he kind of reminded everyone, like, the spirit of this thing. Like, hey, this is outside of the amazing tax benefit for investors. You know, this thing is structured to incentivize investors to do some good in these low-income communities that would otherwise be ignored. So some of the best ways to go about that is using the local politicians who themselves are very, very engaged with the community in terms of knowing what they want, understanding what they want, and trying their best to address the problem. So this is
it goes back to education, because even within the local governments, they don't always know that there's even such a thing as opportunity zones, even though they're sitting in the middle of one of them. And it all still goes back to the whole point of the program is to elevate the lifestyle of the people who live in the depressed areas, to make things better for them, with the added incentive that, you get something too, but remember, the point is to help the people in the community.
Agreed.
Education is key.
Yeah, and it isn't. Sometimes people kind of place that burden on the politicians and the government institutions, but always remember how this thing was structured. You know, normally for a benefit like this, to develop these low-income communities, governments would just create government-ran programs. But, they had this smart idea of, put this in the hands of the private sector, incentivize them so they bring their skills and knowledge into those areas, and they want to bring those skills and those knowledge. So it isn't more so, the government should be doing this, the politicians should be doing this. Like, it's structured for that. Private individuals are the ones leading the way in. I would even commend what you guys are doing, this podcast. You got to think this stuff reaches people that had no idea of this amazing tax benefit, and they may get up and take action. So it's individuals like you who are also doing your part that will educate and inform people about the benefits of this program.
You're absolutely right, and putting it more in the hands of the private sector or the public sector, putting it in the hands of the private people to make it happen, because we all know that government takes forever to do anything, and the whole program would expire before they even got started, because
I agree 100%.
They just are so full of red tape, which is another reason why the local communities need to be involved to streamline the red tape to make things happen in more quickly.
Yeah, the talent always goes to the private sector, so it's structured for that.
Sure does.
Like I said, even like you guys, you'll see very rare government institutions hosting podcasts, but you guys are doing it, and it's going to reach far more people than their call center can.
That's true.
Yeah, we hope so. But, and like you mentioned before, if you were unfamiliar with opportunity zones and you weren't on board with them, then you got to go and listen to Scott Turner speak, because that guy is so passionate about it. And when I heard his thing on the Opportunity Zone Expo, I'm like, it was a slam dunk winner right there. That guy is great.
He literally stole the show, and he did a great job of wrapping things up, because towards the end, people get a little tired and sometimes seem to get a bit redundant with the different panels where they seem like they're discussing the same topics, and Scott Turner just gave a breath of fresh air, reminded people about the spirit of this thing, inspired people, and he did what probably the best thing they could hope for and more.
Yeah, and the OZ Expo is doing 2 more expos in August next month, the beginning of next month, one in Chicago, one in New York, and I just got a notice from them that not only is Scott Turner going to be a keynote speaker, but also Ben Carson, so they should be outstanding expos to go to next month.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, before we close this out, Lance, I got one more question. If you're doing a 1031, or if that's your choice, and you're started identifying properties and you're in the midst of a 1031 exchange, all of a sudden you listen to this podcast, you listen to other podcasts, and you learn about opportunity zones, Is there a way to cancel the 1031 and go opportunity zones, or do you got to just deal with it, and then maybe on your next investment you look into opportunity zones?
Yeah, absolutely. If they identify, they could just simply place a letter saying, I revoke my identification and request the funds be returned, and then the funds could, once they return, they could just get going on their opportunity zone investment. We've had to do that for clients. This past week, clients revoked his identification.
Wow.
We wired his funds to his account, and he began the process of actually structuring his funds so he could actually invest into a property that he was extremely interested in and that was located within opportunity zone.
Well, and that would work both ways, wouldn't it? If you're starting a 1031 and it falls through, or for whatever reason, you can convert it then into an opportunity zone fund. But if you're doing an opportunity zone fund that isn't going to work the way you want or within the time constraints, then you can take it to a 1031 if it's a real estate property.
Absolutely
That's right.
Not. 1031s have a lot more. Yeah, absolutely not. 1031s have a lot more restrictions than opportunity zones. So one of the main ones being, at the close of escrow, the client can never be in constructive receipt of the funds, which is different from opportunity zones. The client's going to have the funds within 180 days. 180 days, the client has to invest in opportunity zones. So one of the reasons we tell all our clients, make sure you call us as soon as you open escrow, is because if clients and awfully real estate agents with poor information think to themselves, okay, well, I just closed this deal, now let's do a 1031. If that check is ever made available to the client, receiving that check will put them in constructive receipt of the funds. And if they're in constructive receipt of the funds, that is literally a taxable moment. I've literally had to call banks while escrow is closed and says, please do not accept these funds to prevent a taxable moment. So with 1031s, there are a lot more rules and restrictions. Opportunity zones have a lot less. So if they close escrow and they accept the funds and they go and try to do opportunity zone fund, they're stuck doing an opportunity zone fund.
Right.
It doesn't work in reverse.
Well, I guess with that, the takeaway is anybody who's listening to this and wants to do a 1031, they definitely have to know their time constraints and their details, which Lance certainly does. So Lance, if someone's listening to this and they're looking at a 1031, how do they get a hold of you? Do you have a phone number, website, or email? What do you think?
No, we have all three. You can give us a call. Simple. Our number is 619-991-1031. And they can go to our website. It's growth1031.com. And then they can always give me an email, no problem. It's basically lance@growth1031.com.
Well, I thought the Growth was a great name, and then you got 1031 the phone number. Boy, you guys are great marketers.
Yeah, we try. It's not just about being good at what you do, but it's about being
well,
able
good
to
thing your name was Growth in the first place, Lance.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's been a bit of a benefit coming out of law school.
Definitely. Well, Lance, I know that you're swamped and you're always doing things and talking about this. I really appreciate you taking some time out to talk to our audience about the 1031s versus the opportunity zone funds, and we really appreciate your time. And I really thought the information here was great. So thank you again for being a guest on the show.
Outstanding podcast, Lance. Thank you.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Yeah, and everybody out there who's listening, you're listening to the Mappable USA podcast, and we are at mappableusa.com on the web. Just go there, scroll down, you'll see all our syndication sources, and you pick the one you like best, and subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes. And if you want to be a guest on the show today, like Lance was, there's a guest tab. You could just click on that, fill out the form, and we'll see what we can do about getting you on the show. We appreciate everybody listening, everybody subscribing. Continue to do that. It helps us out a lot. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week on another Mappable USA podcast. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.